Screen Dad.
I'm actually going to sit in the center of the room. Smart. Yeah, I think I might have. Yeah.
Where are you from? I figured. Wow. When I lived in Israel back in the day, we were trained. You wash your dishes, you open up a little bit, you close the whole thing. Now, I just got back. It's like nobody even thinks of that. It's all education, and then you're back. Oh, it's for the table to keep it straight.
Hello. Hi there, how you doing?
I don't think I need to sign that. This is going around the room.
Oh, sorry, I'm not participating. Over here.
You want to pass this down?
Appreciate it.
All right,
Where
a
do you
little
think is the
technical
problem?
difficulties up here.
Very little, very little.
Yeah, I have some.
This might be a challenge if our microphones aren't working.
Oh, they're on.
You're on. Good.
All right, I think I found the microphone that's working, at least for a while. Thank you for your patience. Welcome. I would like to welcome you to a new era in water intelligence. Driving collective action everywhere.
We could get big ones like this and like this, and we could use more.
Is there a
Yeah,
requirement we need to?
I think we can hear each other.
I wasn't sure. Are you recording? Is everyone good projecting? All right. Can everybody hear me back there? Wonderful. That wasn't working. So, what's that?
This is also recorded.
I don't know if it's recording. Yeah, so welcome everyone. Thank you for staying for the last session. We already applauded for that. Welcome to a new era in water intelligence, driving collective action. Who here knows what the theme of the UN Water Conference is? Accelerating action, change, accelerating change. So we were tested in another session earlier, so I thought I would carry that tradition on and see how many people knew. That is our goal, driving collective action, accelerating change. And we're talking about water intelligence. So my name is Faith Sternlieb. I work with the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. Who's heard of Lincoln Institute? Ooh, a couple people, great. Just happened, right? So I am Associate Director for Stakeholder Engagement for the Internet of Water. And the Internet of Water is an initiative that started at Duke University and moved over, part of the team from Duke University moved over to Lincoln Institute, and we are housed within the Center for Geospatial Solutions. So just to give you a very extremely brief history of Lincoln Institute, it traces its origins back to John C. Lincoln, Cleveland industrialist, inventor, investor who established the Lincoln Foundation in 1946. So yes, no one has to do the math. We are 77 years old. We just celebrated our 75th anniversary. He was intrigued by Henry George. Show of hands, Henry George. Okay. He basically wrote a seminal book on progress. It's called Progress and Poverty, and wrote about land ownership and taxation, and we have been following suit ever since. And we have incorporated climate change, and we have incorporated water into our mission. And we support other institutions in the teaching, research, and publications of information about George's work and beyond. In about 2017, the Honorable Governor Secretary Bruce Babbitt, Secretary of the Interior, he was on our board. He was just about stepping off, and then we started a new center in Phoenix, Arizona called the Babbitt Center for Land and Water Policy. So that is integral to the work that we're doing. And so we have followed suit with our work throughout Lincoln Institute. So I just wanted to give you a little bit about the Lincoln Institute, since many of you are not familiar with that, and a little bit about Internet of Water. We work towards modernizing data systems. Notice I did not say democratizing data systems. I said modernizing, very intentionally, by building hard and soft data infrastructure, by empowering communities. We just heard 2 sessions right before us, the Water and Tribes Initiative session that was right after lunch, and then right before us was the Women in Water Diplomacy Network session. Talk about empowerment, right? So those communities and beyond, that's what we're talking about, empowering communities by creating an enabling environment through building capacity and training. And then building a sustainable network of people. And that sustainable network of people is actually all of you and us. It's all of us together, collective. And that's the collective action. So just wanted to take you through a little bit. We're going to go, just did a little bit introduction. I'll say a few more words. Speaker presentations, interpanel. We're going to have an interpanel discussion after the presentations, and then we're going to open up for audience because we really do want to hear from you. This is going, we hope this to be an interactive, dynamic session. Next, please. So this is, I think, Kim, this is your first slide.
Next one, yeah.
Yeah, we'll stay here. So before we go to hear from Kim Nelson, and I wanted to introduce everybody actually, so I think we might need to go back. Okay. So we're looking at what's collective action, right? Well, first of all, what's water intelligence? So we're going to hear about that. We're going to hear about data, and we're going to hear about all the different things you can do with data and how that contributes or not to water intelligence. How to shape water intelligence? How does it evolve? How do private, government, academic, citizen sectors work together? And how do we promote that collaboration? What role do you all play? What is our role? What are the role of the different sectors? And then how can water intelligence best be used for collective action and positive outcomes? So we're going to talk about all of that, especially as it relates to WASH, water quality, water quantity, as we talk about water data keepers or water keepers. I added that.
We're trademark that.
Yeah.
You can. Water data keepers, I love it. And water stewards, and watershed, sustainable watershed management, how that all contributes to water intelligence. So I would like to introduce the panelists. Actually, can we go one step back? I'm not going in the right order. One step forward. Where's everyone's name? Okay. So I'm happy to introduce Kim Nelson from True Elements, who's going to tell us a little bit about herself and True Elements and what is water intelligence. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Faith. Try this one. Would you like me to use this one? Okay, there we go. I will use this one. So thank you. Yes, I am with True Elements. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, and I've been with True Elements about a year. My background is 26 years in government with the State Environmental Protection Agency in Pennsylvania and almost 5 years at EPA. Then I went off to Microsoft for 16 years. So now I'm back at True Elements where I can combine my environmental experience with technology. So let's talk a little bit about why we're here today, and we'll get a little bit into water intelligence. Let's go to the next slide. So you're going to see there are 3 themes up there I want to touch on. One is trust, one is resiliency, and one is security. And we'll work through some of those. And I think one of the themes you're going to hear a lot today is about trust. So if we'll go to the next slide, and I want to share a quote with you. I actually had my presentation done completely, and then I read this blog last week by some public sector individuals at Deloitte, and I tend to lean public sector because of my 26 years in government. And one of the things in the blog, they talked about 3 things: trust, resilient communities, and security. And they said the 3 most important themes in government today are these 3. Now, they talk to security about cybersecurity. I'm talking about security in terms of water security, which is key to this conference. So let's move on, and we'll touch on a few of those topics and why that's important to the conversation we're having today. So we've all been here. How many people started at 7:30 this morning with sessions? Okay. You do look weary. How many people in all those sessions saw this quote regarding 9% of climate impacts are experienced through water? Somebody said that in your session today, and I dare say it was more than once, right? So the key is, we're here talking about water because that's the way we're experiencing climate change. Things are getting wetter, things are getting drier, things are getting more intense, all related to water and the issues associated with water. So we know the climate crisis is is a water crisis. So what do we do about that water crisis? And so at True Elements, we're really about looking at water and understanding that a water resilient future really depends on water intelligence, having the right information to make the decisions we need to make. So the purpose of our company is really, while water is very, very complex, right? It's inherently complex, and like somebody said probably multiple times today, if this were an easy problem, it would have been solved, right? So it's very complex, it's ever-changing, it's dynamic. Our goal at True Elements is to try to simplify information about water as much as possible so that people make the best possible decisions. And we do that. Our goal is to build a platform, a digital platform, that can be accessed by as many people as possible. And our goal is to create an incredible network of users, because the bigger our network, the more users, the more valuable the information is to everybody. But if we have that digital platform that we were trying to create, what we want to do with that is we actually want to make it easier to understand, so you can visualize the data, so that you can do analysis using state-of-the-art models and algorithms, and that you can do predictive modeling, which is really important. It's one thing to understand the condition of the water today, conditions of water situations today. It's much more important, if we're going to build resiliency, to understand the future, to do those predictions so we can be proactive. So let's go to the next slide there. The thing that really encouraged me to leave Microsoft after 16 years and join True Elements was this notion that I really think the world is starting to see the importance of water. Look at where we are today, right? Forces are really starting to align to address water. And I really think we're at the tip of making a big, big difference. Just in the last 24 hours, looking at some of the speakers and hearing some of the speakers today, I was so moved by the emotion that so many people experienced. Wow. Talk about emotion.
And leaned against the window.
Let there be light, right? We could use more water, but did you sense that, really? I mean, the emotion of people coming here, realizing that we're really finally talking about water. So these forces are aligned, and that's important because that's what we need. So Faith, you talked about, why are things different? And these forces are starting to align. I think, this conference is about action, right? Action. The other thing, though, as I heard repeatedly today, is the need for collaboration. Collaboration across all sectors. And the thing that I think we hopefully will come away from this with today is this notion that if we're going to accelerate and we're going to work collaboratively, it is going to take an investment. So one of the things I've seen in the last year is a lot of uncertainty. No surprise, the economy's been a little uncertain, right, the last year, but a lot of uncertainty in terms of should I spend money, and I don't know if we should do that, and our budgets are tighter. Well, look at this statistic. Every dollar invested in data intelligence yields a $32 return on average in economic benefits. On average. Some of that number can be as high as in the set. If we're really going to accelerate action and we're going to drive for solutions, it will take some investment. But the good news is, right, while this is a water crisis, this is a crisis with solutions and one where there's economic benefits. So on that, I think I'm done. I just want to say, we're going to talk at the end. And how do we have a call to action? I'm sorry. I'm getting what okay, so water intelligence, real quickly, water intelligence. So we try to make it easy to understand. What we have here is surface water quality. We try to look at and provide scores, easy to understand scores between 70, 80, 100. We all understand what that means from being in school. We can overlay, see on the right there, environmental justice layers. So you can look at what water quality is, whether it's, in that case, surface water quality, and how does that overlay with environmental justice layers. The bottom left-hand corner, you can see there as we do predictions for modeling, you can see that red line at the bottom, how it goes from here to up there. That's telling us by the year 2040 in this particular area in Houston, a 100-year storm is going to deliver twice the amount of rain that it does today, right? And then if you look on the far right, if we look at the stressors and we start to predict what are the stressors on water, on water quality, riverine flooding, sea level flooding, what happens in terms of how close are you to PFAS related sites, Superfund sites. So all these stressors that are on water quality, trying to make it easy to understand, red, yellow, green, easy visualizations. So let's go and just finish up here. Again, we want a new era in water intelligence to easy to understand data. Imagine a global network, 1 billion users, all sharing information. So let me turn it over to Mark.
Thank you so much, Kim. Mark Yagi from the Waterkeeper Alliance.
Thank you, Faith. And Mark Yagi, CEO of Waterkeeper Alliance. I want to wish everybody a happy World Water Day. I drew the short straw because I got to go after Kim, who just came in hot. Nice.
It was all the lighting.
She's got tricks. I'm going to see if I can pull it off too. Waterkeeper Alliance, for background, we are a global organization that unites more than 300 locally based clean water advocacy organizations and focuses citizen action on issues that affect our waterways, from pollution to climate change. I want to acknowledge that there are some of our waterkeepers from around the world and some of our Waterkeeper Alliance staff in the room. So I'm going to start this is the audience participation, start beginning here. You guys raise your hands. There they are. Thanks for being here. So our mission is to protect our right to clean water in communities around the world. I think you can go to the next slide. And today is, of course, the start of the UN Water Conference. It's World Water Day. And we all know that water is our most precious and most important natural resource. But yet, sewage waste into the world's waters every single day. We know that too many people lack access to water. And hovering above all of that and compounding things, exacerbating things with climate change and other factors, as Kim mentioned. You may have heard this earlier from other people today too. To us, water is it's more than just SDG 6. It's more than Sustainable Development Goal 6. It is the fundamental underpinning of all the Sustainable Development Goals. And I can't imagine how we, as a global society, make progress on things like hunger, poverty, peace, equality without water. You just can't. And that's why. It's so disturbing when the UN Secretary General said that we're alarmingly off track in meeting our water goals, and it jeopardizes the entire, sustainable development agenda. And so that's why the theme, as I think as Faith mentioned, is accelerating change. It's a big problem that we don't have enough data, that not enough of our waterways are monitored. Here in the United States, something between 65 and 75% of our rivers and streams are not monitored by government. That's like 3 to 4 million miles of rivers and streams. And a lot of times citizen scientists, I'm talking today about the role of citizen scientists playing in this whole thing, and so citizens often fill in the gaps there. And conversations I have with brands, with corporate partners, with other NGOs, with government officials, and others is, a lot of times the conversation comes down to that lack of data, and it's a big issue because data drives awareness, data drives informed decision making, and data drives change. And so, where Kim's talking about their work with technology and AI, and we have a good synergy with each other because we recognize the importance and value of technology and AI in this process, but also recognize the importance of citizen scientists and the role that they play in it. And one of the things that we do the things I think about in terms of this, in terms of data and how citizens play a role, is ensuring the data is comprehensive, that it's understandable, that it's accessible, and that it's trustworthy. And one of the ways we do this is a lot of the NGOs that I work with deploy armies of trained citizens to go out, and they can sample in places that might be hard to access. They gather data from those waterways that aren't being monitored, and they often gather data on emerging contaminants more quickly and earlier than government can. And they play a role in that way. But also in terms of making it accessible and understandable and trustworthy, those are really key parts. So I think citizens science and the NGOs that work with them help increase trust. And they add in a layer of accountability. And that it counters some of the challenges that we've all experienced. A lot of us have experienced is, for one thing, a lot of data is in a way that's so Byzantine and hard to understand that the average citizen doesn't know what parts per million or parts per trillion means or anything like that. You can't understand it. Even you get a CCR report from your water utility, most people are like, what does this mean? I don't know what any of this stuff is. And so we play a role there, but the other situation to counter is that I've certainly experienced multiple times is data being suppressed, and also data being hidden or stonewalled by freedom of information laws, which can make you jump through a million hoops and seemingly take forever to get the information that you're looking for. And we try to counteract that because we want to shine a light on the data, make it transparent, make it open and accessible to people. I want to say when citizens share data when citizen scientists and the NGOs they work with, I'm forgetting about slides. When citizens share data with communities, it allows those communities to be able to address immediate concerns and also help shape their future. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when we talk about having this robust, comprehensive, accessible, understandable, trustworthy data, we're picturing a world where citizens have things at their fingertips and they can understand it, where NGOs are able to have the data they need to drive collective action, where governments have the data they need to make important and smart public policy decisions, where brands and corporations can make smart decisions with their money, where investors can make smart decisions with their money. But at the end of the day, that data, having that data and being able to drive that type of decision making and change is something that's going to help us make more progress on SDG 6 and then ultimately all of the sustainable development goals. I think I'm turning it to David.
Thank you so much, Mark. David Lehrer from the Arava Institute. in Israel. Will you please tell us about yourself and, what do you see for the collective action with water intelligence?
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much, Meg. And it's great to be on this amazing panel and having all of you here at the United Nations. I often say that water is not the scarcest resource in the Middle East. The scarcest resource in the Middle East is trust. We don't trust each other. Just a little bit about myself. I grew up in North Carolina. At the age of 22, moved to Israel, moved from the green and water-filled state of North Carolina with beaches and mountains, and moved to the desert. I moved to a kibbutz, a communal farming zone in the middle of the desert where we don't have a lot of water. And I've done a number of things in my life, but for the past 20 years I've been affiliated with the Arava Institute for Environmental Studies, because we believe that the environment can't wait for peace between Palestinians and Israelis, and we believe that working together on solutions for the environment builds trust. The Arava Institute was founded in order to advance cross-border environmental cooperation. And through this cooperation, we hope to find the trust that is really lacking, and making it very difficult for people to work together, to collaborate. And so under those difficult circumstances, the Arava Institute brings Israelis, Palestinians, and Jordanians together to learn that nature knows no borders. Now, what do I mean by trust? I'll give you, great examples. There's a gap of information, of data, that is sort of hard to fathom, that Israelis and Palestinians cannot agree on some of the most basic numbers around things like how much wastewater is produced in the West Bank. We have the literature from Israel states one number, and the literature from the Palestinians states another number. I'm here today with some colleagues. We were all together last week in Cyprus, where there was a meeting of water experts, Palestinian and Israeli water experts, who couldn't agree on how much water could be sustainably be taken from the shared aquifers that Palestinians and Israelis share. And this lack of belief and this lack of trust, of course, makes it almost impossible to manage our shared water resources in a sustainable way. And obviously, the main source of that lack of trust is the conflict, the political conflict that has been going on for many, many years. But that, unfortunately, has politicized water, the most basic resource, and one that we cannot afford to politicize. I will say that the Oslo agreements were an attempt to bring peace to our region, and have long since fallen apart. However, the one area where Palestinians and Israelis still manage to find a way to cooperate is in water. The water protocols are still somewhat active, but the main reason here for this politicization is that both Israelis and Palestinians see water as a national resource. Of course, if you have a national conflict, then you can see why there would be disagreement. Water has become a symbol of sovereignty for both Israelis and Palestinians. However, there's a big difference between the way Israelis and Palestinians relate to water. Israelis do not connect water to land. Water is a national resource, and we practice in Israel a kind of a hydro-socialism. where we say that no matter where you are, even if you're a farmer living where I live in the middle of the desert, where there's no water, you get as much water as the farmer up in the Gully. That's a government commitment, and they live by it. Palestinians believe that water is connected to the land. If I own land, or if I'm a sovereign over land, then I have the right to take out that land. So really, what it becomes is an argument between Palestinians who want to talk about rights and Israelis who want to talk about supply. So how do you overcome this lack of trust? You have to find common ground. You have to find something that perhaps we can all agree on. That's not political, that's not been politicized. And we at the Arava Institute have worked with our Palestinian and Jordanian partners, as well as our colleagues from Oxford University. And we focused in on wastewater as being a possible bridge the gap, because wastewater is not about sovereignty. It's something that we all produce, and it is something that communities can utilize to provide themselves with water that is not being provided otherwise. It is an unused resource. Israel has managed to really capture that technology. Israel treats about 95% of our wastewater, and about 85% of that water goes to agriculture. It is the goal of the Israeli government to get to basically 100% of our agricultural water will come from wastewater. On the other hand, the Palestinians do not have the infrastructure for that. So both Israel and the Palestinians have a strong mutual need to try and work together to capture that wasted wastewater and turn it into usable agricultural water. And just to mention a small victory before I turn it over to the next speaker, yeah, that's, I'm there. This is an example of how people can, even under the most difficult political situation, work together to solve water problems. Recently, the Arava Institute negotiated an agreement between the Palestinian Water Authority and the Israeli Civil Administration on building a trunk line, a wastewater trunk line that will bring treated wastewater down to the Jericho Valley for Palestinian farmers. And I think that this is a good example of the type of the model that we can use to build trust in our region. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. You know, we could listen to your stories all day. And hopefully, we'll get a chance to hear some more successes that you and the center have seen over time, especially given the example of wastewater. So, Christian Morsing from representing Global Water Alliance.
Right, indeed.
Thank you.
We are a small group of volunteers only. We still don't have anybody on staff. And we work on the idea of collaborating between universities and building databases and organizing the intelligence that we need, doing a lot of focusing on service learning, service-based learning. We operate out of Philadelphia, but we have members all the way in New Zealand and in India and Nepal. We're definitely small, but by all means, join us. The idea that I wanted to bring up is very much a little bit of a reflection of history. I come from the Netherlands. I have a tendency to pay these things in the context of what is a data management actually look like, and where it come from, and how did it happen. When you build and talk about trust, one of the things that comes to mind, because I come out of public health, is the basis of building trust to get people knowing about their health situation and stuff like that. And the WHO has been working for a good 100 years on building a thing called the global burden of disease. In the last 50 years we have one. And we used may I have the next slide? We used a system of paper transfer. And we had uses of research done by having large papers being brought to the CDC or the NIH to be reviewed by professionals who got papers from professionals to work with it about making the professional decisions. All very time consuming and all very slow going. And in that context, that particular idea of why do we do that way is that we wanted to create trust. We wanted to make sure that you had reliable data, that you had trustworthy data, that you were complete. May I give you an example about incomplete data? When in Bangladesh, water was being drilled with small boreholes, all kinds of tests were done by the Royal Labs in London, and they tested all great, but you've got to test for one thing, arsenic. And you know, that way you can get in trouble. Because now you have a situation where you trust for almost everything and then you forget one thing. Now who is to be blamed? Those are the kind of things that come prepared. In the ideas of the EPA, when the EPA started, we had the water situation and doing these things of data collection, and we had to clean up water, and we had to find out who are the culprits. And America is a litigation-built society, so we had a lot of data being questioned about where they come from because somebody had paid. And those are the kind of things that come into when you start organizing data and why you rely on professionals, etc. And that particular form of data collection has penetrated for a long time throughout almost everything. We use professionals to collect weather data. The farmer cannot put his finger up in the air and say, where does the wind come from? That's not a data point. But the whole airline industry relies on it. The whole commuting traffic relies on what you heard every morning before you leave, at least in the places where weather can be up and down. So the idea of the data collection systems have been kind of overgrown in the form of dissemination problems. Who will get it? Who can read it? Like the 100 cubic feet, and it might by way of color point, and in Arava they use the cubic meters. So how do you connect these two things, right? And that's the kind of connections that you constantly have to deal with when you talk about the data from different countries. But that idea of global databases collection was normally driven by professionals. And that whole idea of presenting that in the context of water has been done in the same way. Almost all the way that when we get water data is done by a set of professionals. And we pay them, we train them, and then you do that kind of thing. Whether it is the quality of the water in the harbor, whether it is where the ships have to go so that they can maneuver outside or canal, things like that. But next slide. We need to be having a situation of bringing these data in another way to places where they can be organized. So the dissemination of facts is a translational activity in the past. Because we use difficult words, or we use difficult formats driven by professionals who want to be exactly correct so that they cannot be sued. So the whole notion about all these things is that also a lot of these data are proprietary. We invest in it, we own it, we sell it to you. Those are the kind of things that come to a head start when you look at water. Because water is shared by everybody. Water is a commons. Water is something that we need to understand in a different way than a commodity. When you start to tackle these kind of things, I myself, and it's the next slide, I was carrying their water to show ladies what it actually means to carry 50 pounds of water, right? Because most of the ladies in that APHA conference could not carry it. Those little things about show and tell. Not a data point, but nevertheless a good element. I could get data points out of it if I so wanted. The point of that I want to make is that we have a quantum leap in the last 20 years. This particular thing, all of you have one. Show me one of you who has not inherited business today. All of us. There you go. So, and then we have that machine. He cannot talk at this very moment with Israel if he wants to. Or for that matter, with the West Bank. So the whole point is, we have a quantum change. And with that quantum change comes a totally new way of thinking about things. And that's where I have total ideas about democratizing data, getting to the places where we don't have them, and create them, and that the democracy happens of everybody reading everybody's data and working with it. That's more or less what I want to say. You can go much further, but at the end of the day, what these guys want to do, they still need to do the trust thing. No fake data. And if you look at my last slide, my grandchildren do not know what phishing is. They know what phishing is.
Thank you so much, Christian. I think you hit on two really important points. First, and David, you also hit on this, is that what are data points without people, without stories? You know, I personally get excited talking about data, and so maybe some of you do too. I think certainly our esteemed panelists do. But I have often started talking about data, and there's the glaze. You know, have you all seen it? The glaze over. And so we need to be telling stories about what the data mean, why it's important to collect, and how to use it. What questions do those data answer? And we heard some stories here today. One of the things I want to follow up on with the other panelists, I'm throwing this out in left field here, so I hope you all can catch it, is, Christian, you touched on what is a new era. I would love to hear from the rest of you, what does that mean, a new era? What can you elaborate or expand on Christian's idea about this quantum leap that we're taking? We have we have our cell phones. We have all kinds of ways to collect all kinds of different types of data. What's the new era? Who wants to go? Should I call on you?
I'll go.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll say something.
And since you're going to go first, can you also touch on AI? Your colleagues want to know what the role of AI is in a new era.
Shockingly, that was going to be my answer. So, Mark touched on the fact that how many miles of surface water and rivers and streams are not monitored today, right? 60% in the United States, no monitor. So, I would say, to me, a new era of water intelligence would be one where, imagine if we had internet-connected water sensors on every stream and river and surface water, groundwater source in the United States. Okay, let's put that out there. If we actually, because sensors today are much cheaper than they were when some of those sensors were put in. So that's one thing. Imagine if we had a whole system of water quality sensors out there. Now, take it to the next level. Those sensors connected to the cloud with predictive models in the cloud. So that's where the artificial intelligence comes in, right? It's one thing to collect information about what's happening now, but the predictive models, right? Using artificial intelligence to create statistical algorithms and data that actually predict future outcomes based on historic patterns. And they're continually learning. To me, that's the new era of water intelligence. Because then we know what's going on, and we can predict and continue to refine our predictions so that we can be proactive.
I want to say something about the communities that are not connected to the grid, because those, in fact, are the most vulnerable communities to climate change, to extreme weather, droughts and floods. And there are billions of people all over the world, including in countries like Israel, and certainly in Palestine and in the United States. And all over the world, there are vulnerable communities, whether they be in villages or they be in urban slums. And I think that the new era has the opportunity to bridge that gap, because we can jump over the long period of time that it takes to build massive infrastructure, electric grids, sewage systems, and go to something else, to go to off-grid technology, which will enable people to treat their own wastewater and reuse it, will enable people to pump water and to desalinate, will enable them to do many things that they are dependent on large governments or large infrastructures. And so I think the new era could look very different. It could look like a much more resilient world in which people have the ability to, communities have the ability to provide for themselves. But this is where I think remote sensing and remote control and being able to connect to the data, is critical, because you want to know, you want to be sure that that water that you've treated yourself is safe. So I think that that's what the newer era could look like for a lot of parts of the world that, you know, are not connected.
Yeah, well, all right, so you made a baseball analogy, so I would say new era makes baseball caps. But seriously, the new era, I mean, I agree with what both of them said, is getting...
And everybody here is going to get a Waterkeeper baseball cap?
Cool. Yes. Send me that check.
Put
Getting
your
the
card in here. We'll send
power,
it over.
getting the information to the communities and putting power in people's hands to make decisions for themselves. I think that's our fundamental philosophy in our organization, which goes back for 60 years with the original fishermen on the Hudson River, is when the change happens at the local level. We've got to be able to have the information at the local level and make decisions for our future.
A little example, in Cameroon, I see the female farmers up on Northwest Province using their phones to get the price for the commodity that morning. And so they know how to get into it. They may not be knowing the complete commodity market worldwide, but they know very well what they are going to ask for when they get to market with their product. With a little bit of training, these same women can also check the quality of the water before they drink it. That whole idea of using this type of technology can be done immediately. But you know, there is some literature need to be done. Some knowledge transfer needs to be happening in order to make it happen. But we are on the brink of completely democratizing this kind of working with water in a form of clean water, safe water, and trusting the people that get the water from.
Christian, I'm going to put you on the spot since you said the word democratizing data. Can you tell us what you think, how democratizing data fits into this new era of intelligent water?
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I understand democratizing, just like when I think about patients and stuff like that. Patients reporting, doctors reporting, everybody reporting on the disease situation, and then also sharing these kind of data back. And then not with emotional things by itself, but by the way they can actually translate that into some type of action. The idea of, for example, what happened with COVID is full of political dynamics. Because you have the data, you have the facts, and it gets politically translated. What has that to do with knowledge? How much knowledge do you need to be able to do that? So there's a political component to that. And there is an understanding and knowing about it. So the idea of democratizing data is making it sure that everybody can contribute, that everybody has insight in how the data are analyzed and unpacked and aggregated, so that what comes back as a benchmark or as a trend analysis, that it can also be understood by them, and that they can trust it. It's not only, one of the biggest problems that we have at the moment is that lots of these databases that we have are concentrated in certain parts of the world. And in other parts of the world, they're totally lacking. This can translate that, and that breaking up the network, having solar panels, it's amazing what you can do when you're off-grid. Everything gets reconstructed and deconstructed. Engineers may not like it, but we see an opportunity to get the use of the clean water situation much faster in almost every place if you start using this kind of technology that's now available.
Yeah, Faith, if I can just add, I think one of the things Christian's saying, and really important, and we touched on a little bit, that was also, I touched on the technology component of this, but the other is the human component, right? Mark, getting citizen scientists out there, Christian, getting people who are contributing the data. Just an example, if we really had this kind of data readily available, how many people here check air quality on some regular basis? You're looking at weather, you're checking air quality. How many? Let's raise your hands. Look at that. Maybe you're doing it for yourself, you're doing it for your children's health, right? And so every day you look at the weather and you're looking at air quality. Imagine if we were doing that with water quality, just as you were saying, every day, that people understood for their daily activities what the water quality was, whether it's drinking water, surface water quality, or whatever. That's the place where we need to get.
Great. So you all paint a pretty rosy picture. Are you ready to have some questions from the audience, because we've got one on that note? Yes, please be my guest.
Hello everyone.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Liviu Montescu. I am founder and CEO of Watergenics in Berlin, Germany. And I would like to address very quick two dimensions. One is economics and the other one is technology. And two tensions that I spotted from this discussion within these two dimensions. In the dimension technology, the tension is between it's beautiful to have and to imagine this network of sensors everywhere and collecting this data for us. But from a technological point of view, we are in the Middle Ages in water analytics. Other than electrochemical EC, we cannot measure something reliably in real time. There is Brooke right there in the back from In Situ. We are startups, a couple of others in US, a couple of others, putting a lot of effort in Europe. We are not taking serious. We are not invited to tests. We are not incentivized, paid for our work. Second tension in the second dimension is the economics. Christian, you mentioned water as a commons. I cannot agree more. My first article published on commons and on the tragedy of the commons dilemma was in 2006. I made my PhD on it. But you want the citizens to collect the data and to put it there on the platforms. Fine. Mark mentioned this very well. How you incentivize these citizens and these actions in order to put the data up there. Who will do this? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who wants to take that on?
I'll take on the citizen part. Excellent points, and I can say from our experience, there's generally a pretty strong thirst out there for people to participate and volunteer. They want to get out and be a part of their community and be a part of the solution. I think the biggest barrier is resources, and that's for them to participate. In two buckets basically. One is the equipment needed, depending on what you're testing for, right? You can be testing for bacteria, And as I was saying earlier today, we're going to be tonight giving one of our water keepers from Senegal an IDEX machine, which will help him go back to Senegal and be able to test for bacteria. But he wouldn't normally have the access to $4,000 to $6,000 in his budget to be able to buy that piece of equipment otherwise. And if you wanted to do other parameters, you need to go to a lab. And there are not a lot of labs all around the world. It's expensive. We were paid $400 for a sample on PFAS, for example. So it's resources to be able to get the equipment to groups to be able to do the sampling. They want to do it, they just need the equipment, and they need the training. And the training is, it can be done virtually a little bit, somewhat effective. It can be done when you bring people to a conference like this, and we could all go out to the East River, take samples together. That's one way. The most effective way is going to be to do it in their home watershed, where it's really going to be retained and really be meaningful and powerful. That takes resources as well. That's one of the biggest barriers we have, but we've got lots of interest, and I think our Hughes and he's with the Hackensack River Keeper, which is local here. They've got tons of people that want to get engaged and take samples.
Yeah, I actually want to ask a question, not answer one, because I agree with you. I agree that, to me, it still boggles my mind. We have the ability to communicate. We have these things. What we don't have is the technology to, in the field, be able to test the things that we need to test. We have to send it back to the lab, which is expensive, often not even in the same country. Can you tell us, why is this so hard? Why is this, I'm an economist, I don't know anything about technology. Why is it so hard? Why, we got somebody to the moon, can't we figure out a way that anybody can go down to their river and put in a stick and test all the things that we need to test?
Precisely. So the technology is there. This is the good news. In order to manufacture it, it costs a lot. So we need to bring the costs down. For that, we need demand. And you guys over here, right, who in your different fields of action have access to this demand, we should congregate it and bring it to a common point where say, hey, in situ, right there, they work on very good technology, some of it similar to ours. Watergenics in Berlin, they have that. We provide technology for the worst water on planet Earth. This is acid mine drainage in the mining industry. You have pH ranging from 1 to 3 at best. All right? We're talking about sulfuric acid. Imagine the amount of development we put in coating our probes that stay in the water. Of course we can do this for the rivers. We need the demand. Gives us at least letters of support. Don't respond on the emails after 1 month.
Just to say that solar panels, the price of solar panels has dropped dramatically because of demand.
Exactly. You don't need a PhD in economics for this.
No, but you need to know something now.
I do want to open it up for other questions. Yes, in the back first, and then one moment.
Sorry, just when you're not using the microphone, be a bit bolden.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
Everybody close it.
Okay. Well, I'm Johan Kling. I'm from the Swedish Agency for Marine Water Management, and I happen to be responsible for the management of the lakes and rivers and coastal areas in Sweden, which is a lot of lakes, a lot of rivers. And I think, since I'm responsible for financing a lot of what you're discussing now, I think we really are at the stage where we're shifting from, sending out people in the field to monitor things and look on things. It costs a huge amount of money, and you can don't do it in a few places. We're now starting a work to develop a digital twin of the rivers and lakes. And then we can put all that information we get, including citizen science, which I think has a huge future by using, you mentioned mobile phones or whatever, Internet of Things, something. But I think there is a few barriers we have to pass. And the one is we don't have standards to describe a river or lake. And so if I talk with someone in Europe, which I do a lot, which in the same field, we cannot describe the river in the same way. We collect the information differently. The other thing I think is, for example, for citizen science, when I ask my colleagues, why don't we, instead of sending out one very expensive equipment like pH monitoring or something, why don't we provide this type of low-cost information to citizens and they can monitor it for us? I think there is a lack of trust for that type of information. From my point of view, it's better to have 1,000 observations compared to one high scientifically correct information. It's much better to just get more information into the same place. And the third thing I think is a problem is the security. We are in a different world right now. So I can't show you the bathymetry of the coastal areas. It's top secret. And that is getting more and more problems to get this information into the cell sites. But my question is that something you have considered, the standard, for example? Because that I think is missing.
We were just talking about it this morning.
Oh, great. You saw it.
No. In fact, I'll just comment on one of the things that I heard from our conversation this morning as democratization of data roundtable, was that there really is a kind of a lack of leadership. Who is going to create these standards, or who is going to take the charge, kind of fly the flag, where others will lead and say, yes, let's create common collective standards, because what I have found is that there are so many different sources of data, so many different types of data, that I can't even imagine what those standards would be that would hit all of those needs, the various needs.
May I real quick follow on this?
Sure.
So I think the answer here is the automatization of data collection and the technology. Clear. I'm coming to this conference from Kiruna in north of Sweden. So those of you who don't know, is probably one of the most north. Is 200 kilometers within the Arctic Circle. Okay, is one of the most modern mines in the world. Underground mines, belongs to LKAB, the state mining company. We also visited Boliden, the biggest open pit mine in Europe. And they were absolutely fascinated that what they can do with monitoring water quality in real time, and specifically certain parameters that they were very much interested in and we could provide. And I follow up on this. It indeed is better have less precise data, but much of it, so they can follow the trends. And from here springs then the standardization of data collection, of data aggregation, and then of data delivery.
Do you want to comment, Ken, or Chris John?
No, I like the idea of standardization and then making the lots of these things around. Some of the items, I'm not a chemist at all, but then in certain situations yet you have to go into really deep. And for example, when you have a thing happening like what happened in Flint, and you have somebody deciding to switch the whole water supply system, and you get a total breakup of all kinds of things, then there's a need for kind of a different type of measuring to get it going and to get the repair done. But in general, I think that indeed, like what we did in the health business, we created a thing called Lab on the Lab. Right? Yes. And you do about 60 of the different things that you normally do, and there could be doing 300, but the 60 most ones can do it right there on the spot now as a roll-out panel. Those are the kind of things that we, I think, in the future go for when it comes to water and water security, things like that. And when you look at, for example, wastewater, because I was going to suppose that there would be asked a question about that, and you can do the same thing with wastewater. And how do you do wastewater, get wastewater into agricultural situations? My grandfather never did any kind of testing of wastewater. He just made sure that he would not harvest until 6 weeks after he had put it. So the whole idea of waste management can be done in ways that we build on tradition, we can identify some of the high markers that we need to find out, And then for the really exotic stuff, we do have indeed the more detailed thing. But I think that just like a family doctor has a little bit of a lab, we don't have, all of us have to go to the hospital. And I can see the same thing with doing our water. On average, that's what we're going for. I am totally agreeing that we have to go. And one other thing, we have in our neighborhood a couple of guys who have been trying to create a sort of making testing equipment that farmers can use. And they had to get something down that was cheaper than what the farmers, than what these specialists come and do the service for you. And that kind of activity that's being done in these labs is another kind of what I call democratization. Is if you can make the technology issues translate into tools that can be made cheaper, then that way you also have an opportunity to reach out on a larger market. You go from specialization to sub-specialization, and a little bit of training of the population brings you to that level. So I totally agree with the ideas of going for less markers, but more often. And then.
Christian, I think there was a question over here. I wanted to give another participant opportunity. Yes, go right ahead. You're up.
Hi, Chris Wilkie, I work with Waterkeeper Alliance, and so Mark is my boss, and so I'm going to ask a challenging question.
Are you planted?
I know. I'm going to ask a challenging question, but I'll defer to something he said earlier, so anyway. I wanted to challenge people in thinking about the data discussion that we're having in terms of acquisition of data and dissemination of data, because there's a very important element to consider also, and that's the interpretation of data. Because there's a lot of information that is out there now in metaphorical file cabinets that is never accessed in key decisions. Case in point, my home state of Washington is probably one of the most monitored the waters are one of the most monitored states in the country. And we submit data for the impaired waters of the U.S. And our number one pollutant in Washington state is temperature in our rivers, and we have like 4 times as much data as elsewhere around the country. And our salmon are dying because the rivers are too hot. Data is there, they're not doing anything about it. What do they need to do? They need to actually plant trees to shade these streams. It's not being acted on. So we need to, the people who know the data need to engage with the advocacy community and the decision makers to make things happen. And here's my nod to Mark. He mentioned that the citizens are hungry for participation. They're hungry for this information. They don't actually always have to be getting the test tube in the water. They can be given the information and involved in the decision making in order to make the best possible decisions for their watershed, because they actually know what's important.
Well, I mean, I love your enthusiasm and also your ideas. In fact, both of you, and all 3 of you have planted some seeds for us to really go forward on this, what is, this collective action we're talking about. So we talk a lot about collective action, and then we get together and we talk about it, and then we, kind of go our separate ways, and then, that collection action kind of dissipates. And so we are very serious when we talk about collective action. And your ideas are really going to help us think about these, these key kind of points right here. We've got we want to know what you would like to see happen after this discussion. We want to know what commitment are you making? Are you making to each other? Are you going to make to us? Are we going to make to you? Right? So we need to follow up. We can't just talk about collective action. We must follow up and make commitments. And we, before we close, I wanted to let you know we are planning on hosting a webinar through the Internet of Water. And what I wanted to say about the Internet of Water is that we are working actually not so much towards standards, but creating the back end for water data to become interoperable. So that, for example, you know, Kim, you suggested, what if we could just search, you know, for the water quality or even water temperature on any particular stream in the US? And we do that in Google. What if we were to do that? So that is actually our goal at the Internet of Water, in conjunction, in collaboration with our partners here, to make those data interoperable. And hopefully, maybe we can bypass standards. I don't know. The jury's still out on that. But I wanted to open it up for the last few minutes. I forgot my watch today. I forgot my watch. Thank you. 3 minutes. If you guys, how about some rapid fire? Shoot out some ideas so we can capture that. And then we can compile those ideas and bring it all together in a webinar coming up in a Zoom window near you. Yes.
I'm Ethan Grossman, civil engineer who actually does want to democratize data. So engineers do. Where are you going to get, especially in the developed world, where are you going to get the money, the funding to get this equipment and to some extent training and the computers to communicate that information? How are you going to do that?
Good question.
You know, it's one reason I tried to show the data that for every dollar invested, $32 is returned, right? We've got to get that message across so that people want to invest.
Go ahead.
Hi, Bella Pittman, student at Brown University. So first thoughts, maybe something from the Inflation Reduction Act. I feel like that, you know, a lot of funds coming out. My second thought is I would love to see Indigenous involvement in this data collection, because those are a lot of people who do intrinsically care and already do their own versions of citizen science. And so training, but also discussions about their involvement, what they want to see with this democratizing data, because I didn't get a chance to ask a question, but when we do prioritize simplifying data, a lot gets left out. And so I think that involving Indigenous voices in the conversation of what does get included is very important.
Hugh Carolla from Hackensack Riverkeeper, it's one river over. So in doing the we do data collection for pathogens, Enterococcus and fecal coliform, and we do chemical testing for DO and the whole series of those parameters. What blew my mind was the numbers we were getting on bacteria. And so I'm looking at horrible numbers back in the lab, but I'm seeing fish, and I'm seeing fish-eating birds, and I'm seeing reptiles, and I'm seeing all, and people are seeing the wildlife, and the river is, yes, better than it was 34 years ago, but how do I balance, you know, not balance it, how do we teach or show, yes, it's better, but no, it's not as better as we would like it to be, and how do we get to that point where we can take the data, use the data, celebrate the recovery so far, but just kind of make it go to the next level.
Great, thank you for your comments. Go right ahead.
Hello, my name is Susan Scorbati, and with my partner, Dr. Asim Zia, who is actually the water expert. 5 years ago, we founded this organization called TWIN, the Transboundary Water and Cooperation Network. And we are now on 6 continents with about 35 different community groups that are in different river basins around the world. And so my question, I totally support what everyone has said about data sharing and a standard that I think is really important. But what happens now you find out that, like the PFAS, now you find out that this is all over the world, or that this river, the Hackensack. I think citizen science needs to also, and this is back to what the person who said a while back, the citizen science also has to address how to do regenerative agriculture, how to have soil health, how to recover the water on a local level within communities. So it's not good enough just to find out that it's bad.
No.
We know, we're going to find that out, right, everywhere. we also need to teach people and understand how to, like, we're indigenous populations for a long time, understood this. That's what I feel like we really have to focus on.
I really want to argue that indeed you do not collect data for data's sake. You do it for action. And that's the whole idea behind it. Planting trees, we do that in the schools that we're using. The same students are doing the testing on the water, they're also planting the trees and they're going all over the plant, cleaning up where it needs to be cleaned up. And we need to train them about how bad the water can be. But indeed, action is the element behind it. And that also means that we go beyond our water sector itself. Agriculture is a big, big, big boy, but also the healthcare industry and all that stuff. So the whole idea there is indeed data is out there for data's sake. No, you need to have action.
So I would, I want to make sure to respect your time, and looks like there's maybe another group that's trying to get in. So with that, this is an all hands on deck issue. I think you all know that. We would love to get your ideas. We have a sign-up sheet. It stopped going around for a little bit, but it's going around again. We would love to get your name and email address so we can contact you and get in touch with you about the webinar that we're planning, and we'll have more information about that going forward. Each one of us is a solution. We all have a solution to the problem. I think we have come a long way to go, and I just want to thank the esteemed panelists for your contributions. And for their energy and vigor and their determination to keep working on the issue at hand. So thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And didn't have fun.
Thanks, man.